This is a little bit of an experiment. Today's guest's name is Jeanine. I am not sure how to properly pronounce her last name, so I'll let her say it when she gets on. There she is. Okay, so Jeanine, I see you. Let me try to get you on. Wait, let's try it again. This is going to be the first time that we're meeting, and oh,
Yay!
wow, this is like
Hi.
the easiest ever. So nice to meet you. I was going to say it's rare for me not to at least have a quick chat with someone beforehand. This is the first time we're officially meeting. But thank you
I
so much for
know.
coming on, Jeanine.
Oh, thanks for having me, Lisa. It's nice to meet you. We'll
Yeah,
have a
you
great
too.
conversation.
Yeah, all right. So we're going to be talking about how to navigate co-parenting challenges with a toxic ex. And before you even introduce yourself and what you do, um, how common are co-parenting challenges with even normal people?
Oh, a great question, right? I think we all have co-parenting challenges, whether we're married or divorced. That's such a good point. Yeah, I think it's hard a lot of times to just feel like your spouse or your ex isn't undermining your parenting. And how to navigate that is really challenging, especially when so many of us came from different backgrounds and different childhoods. So we have different thoughts about how to parent and what's right and what's wrong. So great point. Like this can apply to whether you're divorced or you're married, because we've definitely had these conversations myself with my clients in both scenarios.
Yeah. So before we even get into what it's like to co-parent with an extremely difficult ex, because that's the community you're speaking to, are people dealing with high conflict divorce and co-parenting, like really extreme. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your background?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking. Name. And I'm a parenting coach for parents of preteens, teens, young adults. And yeah, I just help them learn how to be their kids' go-to person so you can support your child and help them be like the best version of themselves, which I think we all want, and having that connection and closeness.
Yeah. And so a lot of our clients and people listening in our community are in a situation where unfortunately the other side doesn't really care more about the kids than they do about themselves. And so it gets kind of tricky because I think the rest of the world tends to be logical and they think, all right, well, both parents are adults. And even if they were angry at the beginning of the separation, everyone's going to settle down and then they're going to do what's best for the kids. But the problem we see all the time is the other side doesn't care about what's best for the kids. They basically use the kids to still abuse their ex because that's what they're limited to. We always say once you're out, they're limited to money, kids in the court, and kids last the longest. So are there certain so we went through like how co-parenting can be a challenge anyway,
Mhm.
but are there things like misconceptions about co-parenting that also get in the way, that that it should be easy, or like what are some of the things that you see people expecting that is just not true?
Okay, wait, you froze for a minute, Lisa, because I didn't hear your question.
Okay, sorry. I was going to say, so people have certain misconceptions about co-parenting. Like in our world, we think, all right, once we're not angry, we're all going to do what's fair and what's best for the kids, and that unfortunately never happens. But are there other misconceptions or ideas that get in people's way? Like, for example, oh, we should just be getting along. Like, why aren't we just getting along? Like, what are some other myths or misconceptions people have about the co-parenting relationship once they separate?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great question. I actually have about a third of my clients are single moms, and many of them have contentious divorces. So, this is a topic we talk about a lot. I think the biggest thing that just gets in your way is your expectation that
Mhm.
your ex is going to behave, the way you want them to, and that they're gonna, like you, put the kids first and what's best for the kids. And what I see time and time again is that instead it's more of a power struggle.
Mhm.
And like you were mentioning, there's more focus on just how to undermine the spouse, because I think falsely that people have the thought that, oh, if I undermine my spouse, my ex, or I try to get the kids on my side, like that's going to be help my relationship. When in fact, it really just undermines your own relationship with your kids, and it really puts them in an awful position. So I think the number one thing is just the expectations that can really get in your way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that we always say stop shoulding on yourself. Like
Yeah.
it shouldn't be this way. And it's not just us thinking that things shouldn't be this way. I think it's other people, like people that love us, or even our kids' friends' parents, where they're like, well, why doesn't your ex just do the right thing? Or why don't you just figure out a way to co-parent? Or it must be you too, because it's a difficult situation. Do you see that with your clients as well, where they feel like there's this pressure?
Yeah. Somebody commented, can you put subtitles on? I don't know if you know how to do that,
No, no,
Lisa. I certainly don't.
no.
Okay.
Later,
Okay.
when it turns into the podcast and on the YouTube channel, it'll have subtitles.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. I'm sorry. This is, I got distracted with that. What was your question again?
Um, uh,
I've
um,
never done an Instagram live, so this was all new for me.
yeah,
Um,
that's okay.
yeah.
That's okay. Oh, I know what it
You
was.
know what?
Okay,
If you want, I can share, because I actually just coached a client this morning about this exact topic on how to navigate
let's
things
hear
with her ex.
it.
If you want, I can kind of share some of our conversation.
Sure.
Okay, so what I was noticing is that, rightly so, she was spending a lot of her thoughts and energy and time focused on what her ex was doing, which I think it's so common when that happens. You get frustrated, you get angry, you feel powerless. And it really is like an energy suck. It just drains you, right? So, where we started the conversation is I was asking, I know it's hard to try to quiet the noise of your ex, but where your real power lies is when you focus on what you can
Mhm.
control. So let's start there and think about like what is in your control, because unfortunately, you cannot control what your ex is going to say about you or what he's going to say to the kids. And you also can't control how your kids are going to receive that information or respond to it. So
That's so
really,
important.
yeah. So where your real power lies is like just focusing on staying in your own lane and really trying to help your child experience their environment with you is very safe, it's calm, it's consistent, it's clear. And I know that's not easy, but if you can show your mind that that's really where your power lies, you'll start looking for it and you'll start focusing less on all the toxicity that they're
Yeah. Okay. So we got a comment
doing.
that says this is very hard when they make up false lies. I woke up this morning to him making lies about money, and I had no idea he would go that far. And we know our exes and our clients' exes go super far, like really low, cruel behaviors that ends up hurting not just us but our kids, which of course they don't care about. But how do you deal with it when your child is coming to you and repeating lies that your ex has said about you?
Oh, that's so hard. We were also just whoever wrote that, just know you're not alone. I was having the exact same conversation with my client yesterday. So I think just starting in a place where you realize like there's nothing wrong with me, I am not alone. And like, yeah, this feels hard because it is really, really hard. But know, I think the natural thing to do when they're spewing lies about you is like you want to defend yourself and maybe even like attack your ex. But what I do know to be true is that what the way your kids will benefit is if you can like be the anchor and not badmouth them, right? We want to reduce the pressure on our kids to pick sides. And so I know it might feel impossible when they're spewing lies about you, but what I coach and offer is try to focus on what you are doing and just state that, right? Focus on the thing, like the way, if he's saying lies about what you're contributing to financially. I think we were just talking yesterday about her kid needed her wisdom teeth out. She paid her part. He's not paying his part. He starts telling, the child that he did pay his part, just all this like stuff that's not true. And really, where that leaves you is to just talk to your child and just state what you did do, right? What is true from your lens without ever discussing what he's saying. And again, I know this is excruciatingly hard, but it's where your power lies with your child, and you're feeling like calm and grounded, and just calmly stating what you are doing and what your truth is. Your child will feel that from you, and the more consistent you are with it, they'll believe you. That's what I have found to be true. It might feel impossible right now, but that is what happens.
Do you ever see, so there's a comment, I'm not sure I understand it exactly, but it's, so when we talked a little bit about a parent who's trying to turn the kids against the other parent with making these awful comments that aren't true. What do you do when there's a therapist involved and the therapist starts aligning with the parent who is making the nasty comments, where it's almost like the kid's mind has been thinking like that you're not contributing, that you're not helping, and the therapist is validating those child's feelings, and it's none of it is true. Do you ever know how to deal with stuff like that, where you feel like it's not just you who's being victimized by your ex, but now it's like other professionals who have been manipulated by that ex?
Well, I think first and foremost, if there's a therapist that's being manipulated by the ex, probably not a great person, to be putting your kids with. But what I want you to do, what my guess is what's happening, if you have a really good therapist, is a good therapist or a good coach is trained to validate your child or whoever their patient is or their client is to validate their feelings and their emotions,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily agree or condone with the actions that are being met, right? So if
Good
their
point.
ex is saying things and for the child it's bringing up panic or worry or upset or confusion, a good coach or therapist will validate those child's feelings because those feelings are real and they need to feel like they're not going crazy, right? And that you believe them. And so I would imagine that's probably what's happening. I can understand how, as the parent, you might feel panicked, but honestly, the best pathway through is if you can figure out what your child is
Mm-hmm.
feeling, conflicted, upset, rejected, angry, frustrated, any of those things, and you can validate those feelings, that's going to feel really good to them and help them turn to you to open up. And it'll create trust between the two of you.
Yeah, it's tricky. Okay, so I think the comment, I misinterpreted it, but my children know the other parent is lying and the therapist won't listen to them at all. So when your kids go to therapy and they feel like the therapist isn't validating their feelings, do you have any advice for a parent on how to handle that? I mean, this is hard stuff. I
This
know there's no
is
simple
such
answer.
hard
I
stuff.
know.
Well, I mean, I do think your best strategy is to learn how to validate your own kids' feelings, Right. And real quickly, I'll share just like a real formula, a quick, simple formula you can think about. You want to, in the structure of a sentence, like normalize what they're feeling, state their feeling, and then explain like why the situation might be causing them to feel that way. So it might sound something like, hey, that makes sense. You're really angry, given the fact your dad's telling you that I won't contribute to you going to prom. That's like a structure of a sentence. So we're not condoning what the dad, what, and I keep saying dad, that's because most of my clients are moms, but what their ex is saying or doing. We're not saying what we're going to do. We're just merely focusing the conversation on helping them feel like nothing's wrong with them for feeling angry.
Mm-hmm.
And so
And
that's,
stating what might have led them to feel that way. So you're just being very objective. Like, this is the
yes.
fact. I'm observing something that I see. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's because of what you've been told, and I can understand and accept your feelings, even though in your head you're like, it's based on what you've been told, not that it's true or not, even though that's really upsetting that you would believe something like that.
Yeah, and that's what's so hard, right,
Yeah.
Lisa?
Yeah. I
Is
mean,
that, I mean, that is really hard. But if you just take a moment and try to like just pause and take a few breaths, right? The lie just came at you, your kid's completely triggered and upset. The most important thing is just to give yourself a beat and, take a couple breaths and try to calm your own nervous system. That's probably being triggered and feeling reactive and angry yourself. And then just say to yourself, the best thing I can do right now is to just get on my kids' team, on my kids' side, and help them feel less alone in their feelings. Because even though the facts that cause their feelings might not be true, their feelings are.
mm, right.
And
And
so if
that you
you,
can't dispute.
right, you can't.
And right. And one thing that comes up a lot is when the other side is saying lies about you, the kid comes to you, repeats the lies, and then you say, but that's not true. It's really this. In some ways, it's becoming you're doing the same thing that your ex is doing, because the ex is saying you should believe this. You're saying no, you should believe me. And the kid feels like, well, nobody trusts my own judgment. And I'm also wondering why either parent would lie to me, because I love
Mm,
my parents. Like, why would someone's lying and I don't know how to process this. So that's making me even more uncomfortable.
yeah. Oh, you're bringing up so many things that are just right. It's heart wrenching and gut wrenching for the kids and for you that you're even in this position. It's so difficult.
Yeah.
I
So
think my
one thing
short
that
answer
I want
to
to get your
that,
take on is, and this
oh, I
is
was just going to
another
say,
another
my
unfortunate.
short answer to that, just to answer what you were talking about,
Yeah.
is again, like after you validated their feelings, is instead of being defensive and saying like what your truth is, try instead to start asking some curious questions of your kids, right? Well, what do you think about that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What feels true to you? You know, what do you believe? Okay, tell me more about why you believe that, right? and and
Mm-hmm. So
and get
critical
them
thinking.
starting to talk. Yeah,
Yeah.
our kids are smart, right? And most of the time it's confusing to them, right, when they're being told lies. And most of the time, if you just give them a minute and ask them a question where they turn into their own critical thinking
Mm-hmm.
and think about, well, how true does this feel, and you start there, sometimes that can completely shift the conversation.
Right.
So again, just instead of getting defensive, respond with getting curious about what's going on in their mind. Does that help?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we always talk about, even with people in these situations, is to do a more inquisitorial approach, which is approaching with curiosity, even though of course you're being triggered and thinking, how can I even have to address this? But to do what you need to do, and that's a whole other conversation on dealing with those triggers, to approach with curiosity and as being as calm as possible. Like, well, why would you think something like that? Or tell me how you reach that conclusion.
Mm.
I was going to ask
Mhm.
you the other question about what we see often, unfortunately, is when our children start reminding us of the ex that we got away from. And the tone they're using, the body language
Oh,
they're using when they're parroting that same vitriolic, like hateful behavior. Like I feel we have parents who say, I don't think I can deal with my kid. Like maybe they should just go stay with the other parent because they're triggering me with their aggression and the same comments. Like, do you ever see stuff like that? And how do you suggest
oh my
parents
gosh,
handle that?
yes.
Where they're like,
Yeah.
I feel this ambivalence because I love my kid, but they're frightening me. And I feel like I am starting to dislike them.
Mm. Yeah. Oh gosh. This is so tough. Again, I've got clients. I think I mentioned in the beginning, I mostly coach parents of preteens and teens and young adults. And so it's really what, in my experience, it's been very common to see your teenage boys parroting what your ex maybe has said, or their energy, or the way they respond to things and respond to you. And that makes perfect sense that that's terrifying. Like, that's probably part of the reason that you walked away from them in the first place. And so to see
Mhm.
that behavior show up in your kids is really frightening. And right, again, just to start there and validate yourself. Like, okay, I see this behavior in my child. It feels like he's parroting my ex, and this is frightening to me too. But I would say, like, as much as you can, is to try to come back to, what do I really want to see happen here?
Mhm.
Because if your listeners are like my clients, right, what you really want is for your child not to be showing up and talking to people that way and communicating to people that way. And so the question is, like, how can I redirect that behavior so that they're not, so they realize that's not the greatest way to communicate.
And so they don't turn into one
And
of those. Like, I don't want my kid to turn into one of those.
oh shoot, I'm sorry, you cut out again. I don't know if
That's
that's my internet or yours, but I missed what you said. And so they don't turn.
they don't turn into one of those terrible people. Like I'm scared my child is turning into a narcissist or an abusive person. Like
Mhm.
I feel helpless. Like how do I make it stop?
Yeah, yeah. I know it's just it's in the situation that you're describing. It's just excruciatingly difficult. Um, and what I know is true is your kids are typically around you at least 50% of the time. And that's where your power lies, is when you're with them. And so, right, if you see them saying something that feels really disrespectful or rude, right, if you can just calmly say, like, hey, I bet you can find a better way to say that, right? Something like that, that kind of stops them and redirects them, and you stay focused on your parenting and what you want to help them with, and the person you want to help develop, and communicating your values and showing up the way that you want them to communicate. You have a lot more power than you think you have. Your kids are little sponges, they're absorbing it. And so they're absorbing whatever you say, whatever you do. You can be that role model, right? You can be somebody who shows up with compassion, who shows up with firm boundaries, right? You can be that person, and then really just lean in and try to trust that what you're doing is enough, and that what you're doing is going to impact your child.
Okay, I'm going to take it to the flip side now, based on the comments that I know our clients deal with also all the time is, let's say they are comfortable with you, but they're terrified of the other parent. And they keep telling you, like, I'm really scared. What do I do? Like, how do you help your child learn to advocate for themselves if that's possible in a domestic violence situation?
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I was talking to a different client whose kids are a little younger. They're like preteens, and her daughter is really scared of her
Mm-hmm.
ex. And she also feels like every time they're with the ex and then comes back into their house, there's like a few days of re-entry that
Mm-hmm.
are so difficult. Um, so, in this situation, again, it's just as much as you can, just thinking about before you talk to them, what is my child experiencing in this moment, right? What are they feeling? What's going on inside of them? And focusing your conversation around that, right? And sometimes I know, like with my client, where she started and where we went with the coaching is when her daughter came back home was first just to start with not do the typical like, how was dad's, what did you do, right, where you're kind of fishing and trying to see, but instead just be first, just start with, I'm so happy to have you back here at home. And if your child's affectionate, maybe just slowing down with some snuggle time, and then just say like, how are you feeling?
Mm-hmm. So not what did you do, but how are you feeling? It sounds like the theme of this whole
Yeah,
conversation is like really trying to tune in with your kids' feelings above everything else.
it's the number one thing that's going to help you in your parenting and help you with your connection to your kids and help you walk through this really difficult situation because are feeling really angry, really frustrated, upset. Maybe they saw things at the other parent's house that scared them and terrified them.
Mm-hmm.
And right, or maybe they were treated in a way that made them feel ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're experiencing a whole bundle of feelings. And as where you're again, your real power lies. So I think where the real secret sauce is, if you can make the conversation around that versus trying to convince them that the lies aren't true, right? Or to keep getting in a defensive position yourself. It's really connecting to their feelings and helping them feel less alone in those is what's going to pay off for you in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you're describing that, I'm thinking of the contrast between what you can offer versus what that other person can offer. Because often that other person does not have empathy. They're not capable of validating your children's feelings because it's more about their feelings. So by you being the one who's ready to listen and values their feelings again over anything else, will help them feel less alone and more understood. And they'll be able to see the
100%.
difference. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeanine. Can you tell people how to
Yeah.
find you?
Yeah. 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 Well, I'm on Instagram
Hmm.
at Jeanine.theparentingcoach. And then if you head to my website, which is JanineMouchawar.com, well, you can go to the link in the bio to find that, but I've got a bunch of free resources there. I think the thing that people are loving right now the most is I offer a free guide, which are 5 questions teens talking. I think this will be so helpful for your audience just to have a couple of questions that'll spark conversation and create connection. So I would urge everyone, go do that. It's a great resource and I promise it will help.
Well, thank you so much, Jeanine. It was great meeting you and talking to you.
It was so great meeting you too, Lisa. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. All right, let's stay in touch.